This is episode 3 of the Revisiting Era, and I am so glad you tuned in for this quite philosophical yet very relevant concept of intentionality. In this podcast, me and Jessica will be discussing the ins and outs of intentionality, what it is, what it was, our understanding of this concept as we grew. We are going to be talking about the intentions that we have for ourselves, our goals, our relationships, and how that is separate from the reality of what it is. Like I mentioned, I have my amazing friend today, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi.
Hey girl, how you doing?
I'm doing great. My name is Jessica, or Jessie for short. Introductions. I'm currently going to school, studying to become an elementary school teacher. I am 22 years of age, living my Taylor Swift era.
22.
Ooh, ooh.
Are you a Swiftie?
Not really. My cousin is, so I feel like by default I have to be.
By default, I have to be. Yeah, I'm in that same boat as well.
Yeah.
I'm not. What's your occupation? What do you do?
My occupation, currently, I'm a swim instructor, so I teach little kids how to swim, which is so stinking cute and then so annoying.
How is that? Like, I know when I did swim classes as a young child, I was scared out of my mind, and to the point, like, or it was just me having anxiety that I never quite learned to swim because I was so scared. Like, how do you deal with that? Just like out of curiosity.
Dealing with kids with anxiety.
Yeah.
Well, swimming, I think just understanding like how scary swimming is, just like in general. I feel like when we're adults and like having to like swim, at least for me, like I grew up swimming. My mom was like on the like Bolivian national team.
Wow.
She claims.
Wow.
And so like I grew up with swimming, and in my head, like it never occurred to me that people could be afraid of swimming.
I'm such a weak swimmer, bro.
Yeah.
Like, you have no idea.
Well, if you want a swim lesson, I've got you, baby girl.
Okay.
But,
I've had so many, but I'd love to have one from you.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, wow.
Anyways.
That'd be an honor. But anyways, being intentional about swimming. Yeah. So intentionality, that's our topic for today. I have a couple questions for you that we can both take turns answering on and off. Whatever you feel comfortable with. We have all the time in the world.
Okay, awesome.
But yeah, the first question I want to start out with, just up front, how do we define intentionality, and what has been our basic understanding of it as we grew and became an adult? I can go first for this one.
Okay.
To me, intentionality is basically defined as something we do on purpose with the intent of doing something. I've often heard people call this like active hope. We are actively hoping for an outcome based on our actions. Some examples of intentionality are directing one's thoughts for something they believe. It's something that is very direct. I often attribute it to, did someone do something on purpose, and for what? Philosophically looking at it, I know there's a lot of psychological, philosophical roots behind the word itself, and I found this definition of it. Intentionality is the power of minds and mental states to be about, to represent, or to stand for things. So I think that's a really cool topic. When you brought it up to me, I was like, that is so cool, and it's something people don't talk about. We don't hear about it, but it was relevant back then. It's relevant today. Like, please be on my podcast. Let's talk about it. But yeah, for you, what does intentionality mean? Where did you come up with this topic? Go ahead. Go off.
Oh my gosh. No, your answer was amazing, and I'm like gonna fumble for words with this. Intentionality has always been so important to me, I feel like, throughout my life. And when we first started talking about it, I know like we had like specific instances in our life where we feel like intentionality or like hand-in-hand consideration of others was lacking from particular people in our lives. I think intentionality for me is like thinking about like our intended outcome and like working to do like what we want to do, like to accomplish that with our actions, with our words, or our relationships with people. Intentionality is such a vital part of just our day-to-day lives. And I don't know if you feel the same, but I feel like in Northern Virginia, especially like in the very like hustle culture, and everybody's like really rushing to like go to college and then get their degree and then start working and then get a family, get married. And there's like so much of like hitting those milestones, or like rather checking off boxes. I don't think that's the same thing as intentionality, because I feel like intentionality really focuses on like the day-to-day, like smaller goals. And that doesn't mean you can't have intentionality of like, oh, like for example, I want to be an elementary school teacher, and there's intentional steps that I can take to become a school teacher. But with intentionality, I feel like it's very much like, I don't want to say smaller because I feel like that devalues it, but smaller in the aspect of like, this week, like, I just really want to focus on my relationship with you, Nadia, and like focus on how I can be a better friend in that. And I feel like that's more of what intentionality is rather than on a larger viewpoint.
Right. It's more intimate with the person. A side question, like you mentioned, like we live in like the DC area basically, and we literally don't stop from the day we get enrolled in school to the day we graduate. We are constantly being pushed and pushed and pushed to do one thing after the next. There is never any break. Have you experienced what it was like to not be in this area? Because I've lived here my whole life, and like I grew up thinking like the hustle and bustle culture was everywhere.
Yeah.
But I know you bring up like that's not a thing everywhere. So
Yeah.
what have been your experiences with that?
Well, my experience is very similar to yours because I grew up here, right? Like born and raised, like very much lived the like Northern Virginian like life in that aspect. I will say like it kind of like was a culture shock when my parents, they like dipped when I graduated high school, let me tell you. They're like, bye, and they decided to move to like the middle of nowhere to become farmers, like early retirement.
That's
or
so
whatever.
funny.
Crazy. And so whenever I would go and visit them, I would feel so bored out of my mind because I'm like, I have nothing to do but like watch the cows or whatever.
No.
And I was like, I can't even be productive if I wanted to because the Wi-Fi is not working. I can't connect to the Wi-Fi. Like it just felt so slow. And for me, like that was just like a recipe for disaster for me because I feel like I thrive when I have things to do. And I don't know if that's due to my anxiety, which is a major part of my life, or just due to like growing up like this and just feeling like being productive is good for me. And if I'm not like quote unquote doing things actively, I'm not being productive.
Absolutely. That is crazy and a good perspective to hear for sure. But anyways, how do you define intentions versus intentionality? To me, like intentions is the motive to do something. I'm gonna do this because I'm thinking about it. We do blank to get blank. Intentionality is the proactive side of the intention. Like I thought of doing this. Intentionality is going ahead and acting on it.
Makes a lot of sense. Like I feel like intentionality is also tied a lot into your personality and like your views and your morals.
Yeah.
And so it's just a combination of a lot of things, and just intentions like it's kind of like the difference between a square and a rectangle. Like a square is a part of a rectangle, right? That's how it goes.
Yeah. Okay, now we have this question. Do you think intentions matter? Why or why not?
For sure. Intentions are so important because I feel like as I get older, it's more about the principle of things rather than what's being done. Because I feel like, and I don't know if this is harsh, it probably is, but I feel like there's less wiggle room when I'm like deciding who's my friends or who I'm dating, especially over the principle of matters of just like, if you said you were going to do something and you didn't do it from the get-go, it's like, well, what are the intentions behind it? Or like, what is the reasoning behind it? Not in the sense of like, oh, they just didn't do it because they were tired or anything like that. It's just like, no, it goes to show you like how much you value me and how much like how true you are to your word, And I think based off the like principles, that's where a lot of like intentionality stems from. And so which then determines our actions, right? So if you understand where somebody's like moral compass is or wherever they're pointing, that's where they're going to continue to point, right? Like especially as we're like adults now and everybody's kind of like set in their own ways and like has a pretty good understanding of like what is important to them, how they treat others and stuff like that. Like yes, we're all still growing and like there is room to grow, but it's going to grow within a certain like area, you know, like if you believe you should treat others the way that you want to be treated, like you're going to move within that and understand yourself better of like, I want to be treated in this way. And then you're going to adjust how you want to be, how to treat others in that same way. But if you just like think of others of just like, I don't know, a way to propel yourself forward, like you're going to adjust within that. So, you know, one season it might be like being nice to somebody, that's going to propel you forward, and then another season is going to be being a jerk is going to propel you forward. So I think understanding people's intentions helps you see kind of like the long term of like where their projection is going to go towards, especially within the context of your relationship with that person.
It's very much the you decide factor of it all. All very good points. Moving on, why do you value intentionality in a relationship, whether that be a friendship, family, or romantic partner?
Well, I feel like because it shows you what like lies underneath the surface, right? Like I'm never really gonna know you truly and deeply, and you're never gonna know me truly and deeply. But when you know the intentions are good, you don't have to understand like the intricacies of people in that way. You can still know, you know what I mean? Where it's like, it's not that I'm using it as an excuse to like not try to understand you and stuff like that, but it just like lets me know in the future of like what direction you're heading in, or like if I can trust you or what you value and all of that.
Absolutely. For me, I would definitely say there is so much intentionality that comes with planning. Like if we are actually going to grow this relationship one way or another, or if we're going to mend the relationship after being in a dysfunctional situation, we need to plan. I'm a big planner. I love being organized, and I think that's just my type A personality of wanting to know where we're doing it, how we're doing it, and what we're going to do. And I feel like in a relationship, if we're being intentional with our plan, we will be able to get things moving, you know. I feel
Yeah, for
like a
sure.
lot of honesty comes with that. A lot of communication comes with that, which are two vital components in ever being in like non-toxic relationship. You have to communicate, you have to be truthful. Oh yeah, with relationships we're supposed to be intentional now because like isn't the purpose for us to have a future together, you know? So why skip over that whole part? With family, again, the honesty, the communication goes so big. A lot of family dynamics already come with their internal struggles. There's already like a lot of like inner beef like towards different families or
Yeah.
like both sides, and I feel like the only way to combat that is by literally getting to the root of an
Yeah.
issue as best we can and moving forward in by having that view of intentional action. Like I am not going to do something just to be good with this side of the family, or I'm not going to go behind someone's back to do this. But again, that's super
Yeah.
hard with family. I don't think I could really relate or provide another example, like a personal example with that. I don't know if you have anything to add on.
Yeah, like I think intentionality, like its value really shows or like glows in like times of conflict with another like person, whether you're in a relationship because you're friends, or in your like a romantic relationship, or with family. It's those times of conflict where you're like, hey, like I want to be intentional and like fix this and like really see like how we can grow. And like conflict doesn't have to be this like major thing. It could just be like, hey, it didn't seem like you heard me when I said like I wanted to leave this party or whatever, and like in the future like let's do this. And so we're like adjusting with each other to continue to be with each other. With family, I think it's super important because I feel like, well, it's important in all of them, but I like am gravitating towards family right now because like you said, like you don't get to choose your family. Like you kind of like the flower grows where it's planted kind of thing, and you just have to make best with what you have there. And as we grow older and like understand our families on deeper and deeper levels, as we understand ourselves on deeper and deeper levels, it's really easy to run away from intentionality in the sense of like I don't want anything to do with this person. I'm going like no contact basically, rather than like, oh, like me and my sibling, like we've known each other for so many years, but let me still be intentional with this person. I feel like the people who are closest to us, we tend to neglect the most in that intentionality, rather than like if it's somebody new, you can be like, it's a lot easier to be like, what's your favorite color? Or
Yeah.
like, what's this? Or whatever. And so I think it's really important with family to like continue that intentionality with them. And then with the romantic relationships, like, yeah, if you don't have intentionality when you're dating with somebody, like, what's going on, babes?
Yeah.
Like, are you planning to like get married? If that's not your plan, like, sure, that's great. Like, if you just want a situationship, go do that, you know? But like if you're in a romantic relationship and you're like, I want to work towards marriage, or I want to work towards having kids, or whatever like your plan is in this, like you have to have intentionality.
And it's got to come from both partners, not just like the
Yeah,
one leading it.
for sure. Because you're not just like in the situation that you're planning to get married and planning to like start a family. Like it's not just about you two. Like you're creating a foundation for your kids later. And so if you don't fix what's happening here now, you're allowing room for that to affect your kids later.
And lo and behold, did it. Oh, boy, did it.
Example A and B right here.
I love that. Moving on, I'm going to change this question a bit to why do you think some people value intentionality more in a friendship than their family, or vice versa? Like, why would some people prioritize it with the family instead of the friends?
I feel like there's a lot of different reasons. I think I'll just speak from like personal experience why I value intentionality. I value being intentional with my family, and I say that meaning only like my mom and my stepdad's side, because like my dad's side, I completely cut all of them out. Like I don't talk to anybody. It's been, oh my gosh, 4 or 5 years since I've talked to anybody on that side of the family. Like sure, I've gotten like a DM or whatever from my cousin that like like lives in like Canada, but I don't think that really counts. But like there was like a time of my life where like I wasn't on speaking terms with my dad or anybody from his side of the family. And things with my mom and my mom's side of the family was really rough. And I literally remember telling a friend being like, I guess I'm going to be an orphan. Like that's going to be me. I'm not going to have any parents, nobody that I like can trust and rely on. And like, because the thought of being like so alone, because like everything with my friend group was like going downhill and all of that like made me be like, okay, like let me at least put in like some work in before I decide to call it quits. And so now like it's just maintenance, right, where it's like and continuously being intentional with like my family, because no matter what, like they're always going to be in my lives. Like I can't remove that bond with them as easily as I can remove my bonds with like friends and stuff. Like even though I haven't talked to my dad or that side of the family in years, like that's still my dad. Like as sucky as it is,
blood,
like blood. Like you can't get rid of it. And I think that's like good in the sense that it's helped me like, you know, grow from that. And there's like qualities in myself that I wouldn't have had if my dad wasn't an ass. But that's why I value intentionality with family a lot. And seeing how like the lack of intentionality from like my dad and like that side, and being like, okay, like it's not easy and it's not like something that comes innate. I know we're going down a little dark hole a little bit.
Okay.
But when like I would hear stories of like parents giving birth and then like both parents just like falling in love and like just adoring this child, and like growing up being like, then what's wrong with me? Like why didn't they like love and adore me and want to be like create a relationship with me? And so that was like so sad. But then I'm like, no, like even though you become a parent, like that doesn't mean that they're going to be intentionally like loving and caring about you or anything like that. Like anybody can make a baby. Unfortunately, that is the truth. And I think with friends, it's like my mindset is just kind of like, I can always make new ones. like, I feel like it's really dark, but I'm like, everybody's here for a season, and like I can enjoy a time with a friend, and like, like if it didn't end well, like, okay, cool, like I wish them the best, whatever.
It
But
was a good
like,
era
yeah,
nonetheless.
a good
Like,
era. That's a
thank
good way to put
you.
it. Yes, like that was whatever age it was, and like time for the next one kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like can't get a new mom. Can't get a new dad, unfortunately, but that's where we're at. So I think that's why I value intentionality with family a lot, especially since I feel like it can get neglected.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I think for me, for sure,
Yeah.
I learned intentionality from friends. And I feel like with my upbringing, I didn't prioritize family in any shape or form. So I think I became a little too dependent on my friendships and wanted to keep them going and going to the point that they just couldn't because it was too toxic or people moved on or we became very different people. But the values that I learned from being around healthier people than my own family really shaped how I learned to be intentional, how I learned to treat people, how to take time with people and get to know them. I think these were very valuable components that helped me become a successful adult. I put that in quotes because, like, are we successful like we want to be? No. But did we see ourselves like this when we were kids? No. So in a way, there's like a pro and a con, and like for sure, it's varies with everyone how they tend to view that concept.
I saw a video just saying that kids equate attention with love. And so when they don't feel like they're getting enough attention, they don't think they're getting enough love in
Yeah.
that sense. And so I think intentionality when a child is like developing is really important because I think just like using the like whatever you want towards a child and just being like, oh, that's like, I'm going to throw that on them rather than being like, no, this is a complex human being. Like, sure, they're like 3 years old, but like that makes them more complex and more of a discovery because they can't really formulate what they're thinking yet. So to be like really intentional of like the other person and how they receive things rather than how you want to give things is really important.
That's good. That's good. How did we view intentionality as children? I guess I can share my side of
Yeah.
it. Or overall, I think younger children struggle to see intentionality. I think they are not developmentally there under like a certain age to understand the cause and effect. That's why I see like they have to live through their consequences to learn why they did that was wrong. We see a lot of things when we see a lot of things as punishment when we are younger and a lot of things as tedious. And so for those reasons, like I don't think children are able to grasp like I'm doing this for the sake of this to turn out in a certain way. Like I don't think our brains are just at that young age structured to view stuff in like a timeline. And so I think as kids, we were just kind of like bouncing with whatever, like going with whatever friend group, doing whatever, and then completely like ignoring consequences. But I mean, I guess some of us were different. Some of us were more careful. I know I was very, very cautious and like I was always like hyper vigilant and aware of like, what if I do this, then this or this is going to happen. But that could also be my childhood anxiety.
Yeah.
Like I don't really know how to differentiate that.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think?
Well, 2 questions for you kind of in that. Do you think anxiety and intentionality go hand in hand? I'm going to ask that first. Or let me just give you both questions and then you can pick whichever you want to answer
All
or
right, bet.
whatever. But do you think anxiety and intentionality go hand in hand? And if you have any like specific examples of intentionality, like growing up that you can give that was like, oh, like what you were saying of like, I didn't think that through intentionally, or if it was like tedious or whatever, like, but now I understand the purpose of that.
In a way, yes, but in a way, no. Like I was saying, like intentionality is very, very complex. I don't think I fully grasped this concept until I was like 22. Just being honest, because up until like even up until college was when I really got to meet people who came to me with pure intentions, who genuinely wanted to be my friend for the sake of being my friend, and they wanted to do good. Up until then, I feel like I was very surface level with all of my friendships, if not all of them, because everyone was just very, I mean, growing up in America, nonetheless, Northern Virginia, everyone is so individualistic. Everyone is competing against each other. So it's all a race on who's going to be the best. And really, there's no staying behind and helping other people. So I guess it was either my encounters with people that I didn't really experience a lot of intentionality, unlike you may have, but I don't know. I struggle to see how my past relationships were intentional in all areas. But for the anxiety part, I think it could. I know people with anxiety like myself are huge overthinkers. We overthink absolutely everything, and every little piece we will pick apart in our brains till we die. So I think, yes, you can have intentional feelings at an early age, because you're like in middle school, like I would dress a certain way to get a certain type of attention, or I would dress a certain way to be like someone else. Like this, I'm doing this for the purpose of this. I'm I don't know, acting this way for the purpose of getting someone's attention. I'm eating this way for the purpose of my body to look this way. Like very, like, it can be toxic. It's not like a good way of thinking, but it is just what, I don't know, puberty does to you. All these things. So I definitely think like we were being intentional, but not in the best ways.
Gotcha.
And then my only point with anxiety that I can confidently state is that, like, that overthinking, like, yes, we were planning everything. So absolutely, I do think they go hand in hand, but I also think they can stand alone very much so, because a lot of people don't have anxiety, like, but they are intentional.
Yeah. No, I think that brings up like a good point, that intentionality doesn't always mean that it's a good thing. Like you can intentionally be an ass to somebody else.
Heck yeah.
Like you know exactly what you're doing, and you're doing things to support an end goal that you have like in mind. And so whether that's like purposely like going out of your way to like exclude somebody, whether this is perfect, like you trying to paint a picture of like yourself, or just like reinforcing a narrative that goes in your head of just like people pleasing and stuff like that, all of that can fall under intentionality. But I think intentionality is best used like to be productive. I don't want to say to be like good or like a good person, because I feel like sometimes our definition of good gets muddled a little bit, in the sense of like, oh, I'm a good person if I just like let this person walk all over me, or I'm a good person if I like, you know, just like let them do whatever they want kind of thing, and just agree and never have my own opinions, which I don't think that that's what me being good is at all. And so like I think intentionality can have very different forms, and like that.
Beautifully said.
Thank
No,
you.
I love the questions, and I love your points.
Yeah, I think intentionality like doesn't always have to be good, and all it does is like change like how our relationship is like in the rest of our lives with that other person. A question for you, Nadia, is like, in your life, is there any examples, whether it's with friends or families, that like because of repeated behavior and the intentions that they had towards you, did that shape you in any way?
Absolutely. I probably have too many examples, but I guess a main one that I've talked about previously already that I do want to dive deeper into is how my education went. I talk a lot about being a minority placed in a Christian private school, and solely the intention for this, as my parents thought, they thought it would get me into a high prestigious university, provide me with stability as an adult, provide me with a career, allow me to make a lot, enough, and probably like even more income than my parents would ever make. And actually the opposite happened. I just went to my local university. I still don't have like a full-on career. I'm 24. I am did not live up to my parents' expectations or intentions. I also struggled to get into a lot of schools because I struggled a lot academically and I had a lot of learning disabilities. But they obviously didn't think about that when they were like enrolling me in this school. They thought this was like the savior of like their poverty, or they thought I would be the one to bring them out of that essentially.
Yeah.
And I failed. And the intention was good, but I think it was the lack of being able to see that this is a child. We don't know what she's going to encounter. We don't know how her experiences that we put her through are going to shape her life. And ultimately I became burnt out very, very young. I put a lot of pressure on myself to the point that I literally couldn't anymore. In high school, I got severely depressed. I completely like gave up. I didn't even try to get into college. I very much was like, I am not good at anything. I have been repeatedly told that I would never succeed, that I was good for nothing, that like I came from a line of broken people and that I would stay broken. And so essentially got to my head, and like I get where they were going at. It's the first generation, the American dream when immigrants come to America. Like they want that for their children. And in a way, like I struggled a lot with being able to pick myself back up after feeling guilty for doing that to them, for having wasted so much money. But in the long run, like they had another kid who's doing fantastic. So I mean, the pressure is not on me entirely right now, and I'm free to do whatever I want. But I guess that's a little example that I can give you.
No, that's so good. And like, I think that goes to show, wow, intentionality is really important when like developing relationships with people. The consequences or the actuality and the facts of a situation, it doesn't outweigh that, you know? Like I can have good intentions, but if I hurt you in the end, like I hurt you, you know? Like my excuse can't be like, well, I had good intentions. Well, it's like, cool, great. Gonna put that as a footnote. You
You
still
can't
hurt me.
ignore it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. For me, with like intentionality, like an example of like consequences overruling kind of like intentionality in that is back in high school. I had a friend. Do I use names or no?
You could give them a different name. I openly have called people out on my podcast. Like I have no shame in that because you hurt me. But
Yeah.
it's not like they will know. You can tell. You can say it.
Okay. Well, no, now I feel scared.
Person A.
Person A.
Give
No,
them a
I'm going to
fake
give them a
name.
fake name.
All right.
Okay. So using fake names with the situation, but back in high school, I had a friend named Bob. We were like real tight. We were like best friends. I considered him like my best friend, right? And he also had another friend. So Bob's friend was what we're going to call him. Let's call him Max. So Bob and Max were like best friends, right? And there's this other guy named Matt.
Yes.
Okay. Bob, Matt,
Max.
Max. I'm just going to use real names. I'm getting myself so confused.
I hate this. Okay.
Okay. So back
person
in
A, B, and C.
yeah, I'm going to say they're fake names, but they're not fake names.
Okay.
So back in high school, I had a situation where like my friend Jake and I were like best friends, right? Like he was like my number one, helped me out through a lot of things, like best like guy friend, right? And he was best friends with this guy named Xavier. Love Xavier. Xavier's an amazing person. Love him. And they were friends. And then there's this guy named Sean. And Sean, I don't know Sean. Like, really don't know him like that. Like, can't say anything or whatever. And, like, I had never had a conversation with this man in my life. Didn't, only seen him, like, in passing in the hallways maybe once, you know? And Sean and Xavier both had a crush on the same girl, right? And Jake wanted to do his friend a favor, to do Xavier a favor and like help get rid of the competition, you know, with that. And so this man, when I tell you, I am not lying when I say this man like Pavlov dogged Sean into liking me that whole summer, right? Like we'll always go up to Sean whenever they would hang out and be like, you know who's amazing? Jessica. You know what she did today? Oh my gosh, let me tell you about it. Like so many things, like I don't even know, I wasn't there, right?
Whoa.
Had no idea this was going on. So the whole summer he was like basically like getting Sean to fall in love with me. And it sounds dramatic, but it freaking was, let me tell you. So Sean developed a crush for me. First day of school, we get back to like senior year or whatever. We get back there. I meet this man for the first time, and like he's so nervous to talk to me,
That's
and like
weird.
vividly like stuttering and stuff like that. In my brain, I'm like, oh, like he might just be anxious. Like I get it. Like cool, whatever. Homecoming rolls around, and I get pulled out of my class where no, yeah, I get pulled out of my class. I was TAing a class. And in that class, my friend Jake was in there. And so he was like giggling to himself while I'm being pulled out. I was like, I feel like you know what's about to happen and I don't know why. And I get pulled out, right? When I tell you, Sean is standing there with a sign, flowers, like some treats for me, being like, can you go to homecoming with me? And like
Wow.
tears in his eyes, Nadia. I am not lying. This kid was like shaking like a leaf and like about to cry by like talking to me. And I was so confused. And so I said yes. Like, what am I supposed to say?
What are you supposed to know?
Like, no, whatever. And I was just like so confused. I was like, I've just met this man. Like, I don't know why he's like crying to like ask me out like to homecoming. And I go back and I like go into the room and I see like my friend. He comes up and he's like, so how was it? Whatever. And I was like, you had a hand in this. And so we're going to talk. And I was like, basically, we usually take the bus home after school. I was like, you and I are walking home. Really, that was the most awful walk of my life. It was like over an hour to get home.
my
It was
God.
so hot that day. I regret making that decision, but I needed to talk to him, right? And so I was like, what happened? Like, what is this, basically? And he's like very straightforward that he was like, this is where the intention part comes in. He's like, well, I wanted to help my friend Xavier out to like get the girl or whatever. So I needed to get Sean out of the picture. And I asked my friend Nikki, like, if she would like be comfortable with dating Sean, right? And she was like, no, I'm not interested. And so his brain, he goes, oh, asking was the problem. So I'm not going to ask Jessica if she wants to date Sean, but rather I'm going to Pavlov dog him until he like likes her, basically. And I was like, you know, you can't do this to people, Jay. Like, you put me in an uncomfortable situation, and I get it. Like, your intentions were, like, good or whatever. Like, you wanted to help a friend out, but in doing that, you put me in a bad situation, and aren't I your friend, too? And eventually, like, we had a long talk about it. Like, he's like, oh, okay, like, I get it now, or whatever. And I was like, cool. But it was such a mess. Girl, I wasn't even planning to go to homecoming. I had to buy a ticket to go homecoming. Show up. This dude ignores me for the entire night and is like following this other girl around there. And I'm
No
like, I wasn't even going to
way.
come here, but I did because you were crying like to ask me out. And I felt bad about the situation that like our friend like put us both in. But no, I don't
No.
think intentionality rules out actual consequences
Oh
of a
God, no.
situation.
Men are so stupid.
So dumb. So
I'm
freaking
so
dumb.
sorry that happened to you. That
That's
was
all
so
good.
bad. Oh
Ugh.
God. Intentionality though. We as adults, like I
Yeah.
feel like we gotta like get it down.
Get it down. Yeah. Now I feel like my standards are higher. Like now if somebody like does something, I'm like, you're too grown. You're too grown to be acting like this and not understand the intentions behind it.
How have we experienced personal transformation from our gathered understanding of like attachment or intentionality over the years? Like our personal impact from that. Do you want me to go first or do you want
Yeah.
to go?
Whichever.
Okay. Overall, like what we were saying, like I have learned intentionality from more recent experiences than not. I think it's something we definitely learn over time. But personal transformation is something I started doing in 2020 all the way to now. I was really put face to face with my old toxic ways and my old behaviors until realizing like this is not the person I want to be. I realize I hurt a lot of people by being a certain way, and from now on like I genuinely want to be a good person because the world does not have enough of that. People are broken, and people who have been hurt are continuously going to hurt other people, and I saw myself going in that route. I don't want to be that person for other people. I don't want to be someone's bully. I don't want to be someone who literally fights to end someone's reputation and whatnot, unless you completely screw me over. But again, like I have continuously been taught again and again by the grace of other people who have genuinely wanted the best for me, that seeking out that revenge and honestly, like, living a life of anger and hatred towards other people is not the way to go, because it ends up falling on yourself. Like, you end up falling on your face. And as hard as it has been, and it's still literally a struggle today, but I feel like everything I try to do with like any relationship going forward is valuing the intentional aspect of it. I don't think I dive into a relationship without having any like goal of intentionality with it. Friendships I've made in the past year have definitely been formed over like the basis of like, I know I want to be your friend because like I genuinely want to be good to you. I don't want to treat another human being, and I don't want to use another human being as I had before.
That's so good.
Yeah, I think that's just overall for me how I have grown. Again, from attachment, like it's not something we covered directly in this episode, but I know attachment has a lot to do with how people bond to other people, how relationships can form, and like attachment affects our development. It affects how we treated other people back then and how we continuously react to other people's actions right now. But in your understanding of attachment and intentionality, like what are your points on that?
Yeah, I think listening to your talk, like I can agree with all of that. And I can see how we differ though, too. I think for me, in my attachment, I get very loyal very quickly. Like once I like, it's so bad, girl. Like seriously, I'll have like one conversation with somebody and I'm like, that's my friend. Like, and it's not like tight in the sense of like, now I'm going to share like all my deepest, darkest secrets, but I'm like, no, like now I'm going to start moving with this person like through life together. Like that's the loyalty that I like do. And I think because of that and being like burned so much in the past from like having this expectation from the get-go of like, and I don't think it's a conscious expectation. I think it's just kind of like the expectation of like, oh, this is how I treat this person, so I expect this person to treat me the exact same way. And so when that doesn't happen, or it like they do something that kind of goes against my moral code,
Yeah.
then like it really rubs me the wrong way, and I feel hurt and I feel like betrayed or whatever, and it shouldn't be that serious. Well, obviously there are some situations where like, yes, like I have been betrayed, I have been hurt in this way, but some people just like are friends differently. Some people just show their love differently, and so like I shouldn't take everything that isn't aligned in what I personally would do as a threat to our friendship, you know? And so I think from that, I've been intentionally kind of more go of the flow with my friendships.
Yeah.
From the get-go of like, you know what, like I enjoy hanging out with this person, but I don't have any expectations. Like if they don't text me back, cool, whatever. Like and like lowering that expectation there, and then that kind of in turn like lowers my expectation that I have on myself towards others. My anxiety goes up when I feel like I failed like people and stuff, and so when I no longer have that expectation of like I have to be this amazing friend to this other person, like I have to be there for them all the time, like I have to talk to them about their problems and like pull them out of like whatever they're in, because that's like my own like mentality that like I had like built over the years, and to like deconstruct that and being like, no, like I can just be a friend. Like that doesn't mean like we're best friends or like we talk every single day or anything like that. And it's like knowing that there's levels to it, I think is important. I think that's how my intentionality has changed.
That's good. And then learning that as an adult is so important. Like, we can't expect things from people. We're grown. Like, everyone's going to
Yeah.
do what they want.
And like continuously growing it too, because I know like for me, like I didn't understand like how to be intentional in romantic relationships growing up, or like setting boundaries with people who are in relationships too, because like I just didn't understand. Like I had no idea, and it wasn't until I like grew up and like had my own relationships and like, oh, like this is actually something I value, or like this is something that like I need to be like talking with my partner about in this way.
All right, as we're wrapping down to our last three questions, we have one more. Our generation is caught up in finding our calling. Why do you think this is an issue? How can we go about planting our roots with what is more genuine rather than what we think is expected of us? Do you want to go first for this one?
Yeah, I can go first. Being caught up in like finding our calling, I personally think is an issue because I feel like we're looking for this grand purpose, like this one thing that like we're working up and building up towards, when our purpose is just like to live life. And we have little things that we can do to help others around us. But I feel like the important thing is to like live and to learn, to constantly be growing in yourself and learning about yourself and learning how you can be different, and the intentionality just within yourself, and being like, like this is an aspect of myself that I'm not really proud of, but I want to move away from this, and like understanding like trying is still authentic in that way. And I feel like it can be very dangerous to just believe that, oh, everything that I'm working towards is towards this one thing, or everything that I do is because of this one thing, because it makes you a very one-dimensional type of person, I believe. Or it gives you excuses to like pull things. Like I know like in my life, people like in the church community and being like, God called me to do this. And I was like, I don't think that's God talking, and like trying so hard to be like, God's taking me to this grand purpose or anything. Like I need to go halfway across the world to go
Is he
do
now?
it.
Are you sure?
And I'm like, God would have opened the door if he wanted you to walk through
Yeah,
it,
exactly. Oh.
And I think with this grand calling, or like with media being like, oh, I need to go like save the world or something like this. And I'm like, you can make a difference here. Like you can make a difference like working a 9 to 5 and impacting the lives that are around you in that day to day. And even in the process, like say like God is calling you to, like for me, like being an elementary school teacher, like that doesn't mean from here to now like my life doesn't exist. Like I still have to live my life. I still have to go to school, and in the mundane things and in the intentionality of those mundane things, that's where growth happens and that's where life happens.
Absolutely.
What about you? What do you think about all of that, of our generation getting caught up in our calling?
I think the number one thing that stands out as being like a mental health person who studies this is it causes depression. Lot of statistics constantly show that the post-college era can be one of the most depressing times of a young adult's life, because you're directionless. You no longer have that structure of school. You no longer have, I mean, this obviously doesn't involve people who did a gap year or anything else, but for most of these people, like they have no structure, they have no set schedule, and if you couldn't find a job in college to set you up for the future, like you feel like you're going backwards almost. I know a lot of like people my age are still living with their parents, and they're like, I'm lost. I feel stuck. Like this is not where I wanted to be now. And so I think like you feel like you have to have your calling right now. You have to achieve it right now. And if you didn't right after college, then you are a loser and you failed at life. Mind you, we're in our early 20s. We should not be feeling like we failed at life because we're just started with life.
For sure.
So that whole depression factor and like that spiral, and like unfortunately that does lead people stuck there if you don't realize that this is not the end. And like a lot of adults unfortunately stay stuck there, and they get to be in their like mid 40s with literally such a low view of themselves, such low self-esteem, which affects them in every single aspect you can think of. And another thing I really want to emphasize is like, because I have a calling doesn't mean I don't have value. I think every person is made to do such great things. We each have a unique calling. I mean, it's really not about stressing to find it. It's about letting yourself take a deep breath and relax and see like, what do I feel more comfortable doing, and like what are my dreams and goals. Like I get that for some people, like it can be very hard when you've been broken down to pieces, but I mean like this is your life, and everything that you went through was valid. How you reacted to it was valid and should be considered and understood, whether that be by a medical professional or by a good friend. Like you deserve to be heard. Your life is not a project. There's no layout and there's no grade is what we said. So there's so much flexibility with what you can do. I really like, please don't stress. And like, even if you are past that early 20 stage, like I'm approaching like my mid 20s and I still don't got it together. But I mean, there's so many other people in your shoes, and everyone figures it out. I feel like I look up to so many people who have figured it out last minute or are still doing it, and I'm like, how did you manage to do that? Like, I don't understand. But I mean, you never know. I think that's the great component about life, but also not so great. You never know. It's the unknown.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that like goes into the belief of like, oh, like my life will start once I have my calling and stuff like that, where I don't believe that's what it is. I think our calling isn't like this role for us. Our calling is like our enjoyment in life. I feel like for me, like I find enjoyment in teaching, right? And I don't have to wait to become an elementary school teacher to help teach and like to help teach.
You
like
do that now, like how we started. You're a swim coach.
I
You already do
know,
it.
I know, and I love it so much. And like just like learning different facts. Like I love learning so many like fun facts about animals, like butterflies have taste buds in their feet, you know, like, and being able to share that information and have delight in that. I genuinely believe like that is like my calling, to like have delight in this world, have delight in like my friendships and relationships that are around me, because you know, like, not to get like too depressing, but if you're like constantly like waiting, then you're gonna let life pass you by. And like the relationships and the people who like are meaningful for you and the things that you can delight in now, like you won't have a chance to delight in them later.
No way at all. How did you learn to slow down, basically?
I think I was going too fast and I crashed, basically.
Yeah, and you hit a wall.
I
And like, what
did.
now?
But to slow down with like my intentionality, that happened. So my friend, different Sean, he unfortunately passed away like a year after I graduated high school. And this was like in the midst of like a big like group fight, but like
Oh,
basically
wow.
between him and I, right? It was
Oh,
so
yeah.
bad, and I felt so guilty and ashamed, and like the fear of death like was really real, because I
Yeah.
live in Northern Virginia, babes. Like that's not something common. Like I feel like people's like first death experience is like with their grandparents and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
it's like peaceful old age or anything. And so like have an experience where like him texting us like the day he was like dying, like being like, I could hear him loading the gun, like this and this, like terrified me. And like it just sent me in such a rush, and I was like doing so many things because I'm like, I need to experience it all before I die, because like tomorrow's not guaranteed. And like, while that's true, it's not sustainable. For like a good year or two, I was like constantly doing things like overworking myself, running around like ragged, basically. And I had somebody pull me aside and be like, Jessica, you're doing too much. Like,
Yeah.
you can't do this. Like, it's okay. Like, and even what they said, it wasn't like this magical thing. Like, it wasn't a snap of the fingers that like made me calm down and realize, but being like, no, like I can like trust, and like my faith has really helped me in that, of just like I can trust God to like provide for me, and you know, like he has a good plan for me, and so I'm just going to enjoy each day as it comes. And I definitely still do have like my depressive moments where I'll go like days without really being mentally here. And then I'm like, what did I do this past week? Nothing. Stared at my phone for God knows how many
Yeah.
hours. But I don't feel rushed anymore. Yeah, in that.
Okay,
I
that's
don't know if
really
that
good to
answers
hear.
their
It
question.
definitely did. I mean,
Yeah.
again, we all go through something so pivotal that leaves us just like shattered and broken and with no direction. But I honestly like I want to like validate that, because I notice like being busy is like a coping mechanism,
For sure.
and it's just our attempt at trying to push that pain away, to push it down, to in a way like try to ignore it, but we can't ignore it. In the
Yeah.
end, we have to face it.
Yeah.
And just I don't know, you sharing that was like very powerful, and then like that's
Thank you.
super like relatable, but also like very sad.
Yeah.
And like there's so many stories of just like people just having to deal with the effects. Like I know like it affects so many people.
And I do feel very privileged that I'm in a healed place where I can slow down. You know, I feel like I could not sit myself down like a year or like even 2 months after it happened, right? And be like, you need to slow down,
Oh yeah,
Jess.
no
I would have
way.
been like, screw you. You have
No.
no idea what I feel like or anything like that. And that's true. Like and it sucks. It really sucks to say that like it takes time to be able to slow down, but like your heart needs time to like catch its breath and just start breathing and like be like, okay, like there's no danger right now.
It's
And
gonna be
unfortunately,
okay.
it's going to be okay. But unfortunately, that's not the reality for some people, that like danger is still present and like I have to rush through it, or like I'm not going to be able to feed my family. I'm not going to be able to like, you know, just like, yeah, so many different things.
Oh yeah, for sure.
What about you? How have you learned to slow down in life, or are you still learning?
I think I'm still learning. I mean, I can definitely see like the healing that you have become as a person, and like for me as well, like time has been the source of my healing. But not only time, like I think just having experiences with like people and seeing how my past behavior was not okay, was not acceptable, and how it led me to ultimately crash in 2020. How I really like came face to face with everything at once, and it hurt so bad, and I was like, I don't ever want this to happen to me or to anyone, to my worst enemy. Like I wouldn't wish this on anyone. And so it's kind of like you said, like I was forced to face my reality. I was forced to be like, for life to look me in the face and tell me like, you're doing too much. If you don't stop, like something really bad is going to happen to you. And unfortunately, like it did, like I didn't listen, and I wasn't able to like discipline myself. And I feel like I'm still learning every day, because I feel like I'm behind in life. I think that's something I struggle with. But I have slowed down in the sense that like in 2022, after like I lost one of my jobs, I was jobless for a couple months, and I was like, you know what, like it really forced me to slow down. It forced me to the point that I told myself, actually, I think I need to keep resting. I think I need to take more time off to heal. And then I got like a part-time job working at the company like I still work for today, and I became full-time and I became a manager. Like I would have never guessed myself doing that like 2 years ago in 2022. I know, but it was just like God telling me like, you need to slow down. You need to stop. You need to stop freaking out over this career, over what people are going to think of you. Your body, your mind, and your soul cannot handle too much right now. And so I'm going to force you to slow down. And it was probably one of the best decisions I made, because I came out so much healed.
That's
and
so
like
amazing.
even right now is when I just started to look at like, what are my next steps? Because I'm ready. I feel ready. But that wasn't me 2 years ago. Even a year ago, when I was like, oh, maybe I should leave this career. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. God was like, I got other plans. You're staying there. Like, sorry, I'm going to deny every single application. And I feel like over like 100. And they were all like, no, sorry. That's just powerful. I don't know.
I know, but it's such a painful process.
It
But like
is.
it is like, you know, like like you have a bow and you're drawing the arrow back. Like each thing and each rejection like is going to propel you like forward, because you now have that like drive and motivation, and it's coming from a good place. And I think that's like so important with intentionality of like, where's it coming from? You know, like with my friend's behavior, it's just like I know it came from a good place, so it was easier to like handle like the reasonings for it. If it had come or came from a bad place, then it would be a hard time to be like seeing that person as a person that I care about, you know.
So as we're coming down to the end of this episode, why did you choose intentionality? Just like an overall.
I chose intentionality because I feel like while people have good intentions, a lot of things get miscommunicated. Or on the other hand, people have goals and their intentionality is not what they project to others in their relationship. And I feel very frustrated at times in my own relationship. I know when we first had this conversation, like that was key like conflict that was happening in my life there, where somebody's like, well, I cared, so like isn't that enough? And I'm like, no. Like it's not enough. Like that doesn't mean I'm gonna hate you now or anything like this, but it's still gonna have consequences in it. Like, you know, I think it's really important for me to learn how to like be more intentional with myself and where I want to go, be more intentional with my friendships, my romantic relationships, with my family, and always just be thinking about it and be present, because I feel like my go-to is just to disassociate and just not be here. And so I want to change that. I do want to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. That was really, really, really good. To tie everything together is like in this podcast, we answered 3 key points that we want you guys to take away and basically apply to your life as like intentionality is relevant. And we established that it was relevant back then and it's still relevant today. And as we will grow, the first key point question is understanding what your motives are and learning to interpret one's intention. I think that's super important if you ever want to grow a relationship in a healthy way. If you ever want to understand people better, I think developing interpersonal skills is so vital in our career, in our social life. I think without interpersonal skills, where would we be? And then number 2, how to navigate relationships when somebody has good intentions but crosses a boundary. Do you have anything to comment on that one?
I think kind of like what I said before, I think like you reap what you sow. Like there should be consequences for people like crossing a boundary. Like again, it could be the best intentions, but drawing that line in the sand and being like not being afraid of conflict with somebody, because just because you have conflict with a friend doesn't mean the relationship is going to end, but it shows that something needs to change, you know. And stating that, being true to yourself, because if you lie and let somebody cross that boundary, you're just going to be resentful in the end and just be bitter, and like 10 years down the line, you're going to be like, remember when I paid for your Starbucks, or like
Oh my
something
gosh,
like
holding that
this.
grudge on them. For what?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think it's really important to set boundaries when navigating relationships, and also having grace of like really not seeing their good intentions as excuses and taking those in consideration.
Yeah,
What about you? What
sounds
about
good.
your answers?
Like you said, I feel like when we feel that a boundary has been crossed, of course, we're going to exhibit negative emotion, whether we express that or not. So I think it's important to tell people to help them recognize that what they did hurt us, and it did hurt us, or else, like, I guess just to avoid the gaslighting from taking place, I think is very important. But again, like, I tend to give people a lot of chances, but I am every day trying to learn not to let people walk all over me, because as much as I want to keep a relationship going, I need to value my worth, and like I need to set you straight, and I need you to understand where we stand on that.
That's so good. I'm not great at that.
I'm terrible at it, no, for sure. But as we tie into the third final point, we answered as we grew up, how did we change the narrative for good to bad? Slowing down, I guess. Being able to give ourselves grace. Do you have any final point?
Yeah. I think as I grow up, the narrative changed for me growing up. Like when I first went through like situations, like I definitely had like a negative narrative on it of like, I'm a victim and all of this jazz. And like I do think that's still true to like a certain extent with certain situations that have happened. But I think as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh yeah, I should not do stuff like that, you know? Like there are ways that people had to set boundaries with me and be like, hey, like you crossed the line. Like with girl code, right? I had mostly guy friends growing up, so I didn't have a chance to really understand like what is girl code or anything like that. And I have had like embarrassing situations of like, oh, like wow, in my head like it wasn't really anything. It's just like, no, like I needed to be extra careful with certain things and being like that. So I feel like as I gotten older, like the narrative has changed to good, because I'm like, I'm a better person now. I'm not as cringy as I used to be.
And that comes with growth and development, hands
Yeah.
down, 100%. Well, it was such an honor having you on my podcast
thank
today. I am so
you.
grateful that you took the time out of your schedule to come here and just talk to me about this amazing concept. Again, guys, the Revisiting Era has been launched with 2 episodes out so far. The first one on healthcare and the second one on friendship. And now we have our third one on intentionality. These topics are fire. And I really would love if you guys could subscribe and listen and tune in. We have 8 more guests after
Woo!
this
So
one.
exciting.
But this is definitely probably one of my favorite topics so far.
So
If not
far,
so far,
it's
if
gonna
not,
be your favorite
it's gonna be
topic.
my favorite, if not one of the favorites,
Yeah.
the favorite.
No, thank you so
But
much for
no,
inviting
yeah.
me on the show.
Any time you were great. You did so good. Any last words for the fans?
Last, but no, thank you so much for the show. I think it's really cool that you, kind of going back to our topic, are intentional with what you want to do, that you're doing a podcast. You're not doing things that are like, go out of college, do your 9 to 5. And like, I know you spoke on like some struggles with that, but I think enjoying your life and doing what you want to do is such an incredible thing and a hard thing, and especially to like put yourself out there. At least for me, I might be projecting and you might be like, it's easy breezy to put myself out
Oh
there.
no.
Okay. Well, but like to have a whole Instagram and to post all of these things and then to find people and like really want to spend time like just talking to them and talking about topics that they are interested in, I think is super cool. And so you guys should definitely continue to listen to
Yeah, that's
Nadia.
right. I let my guests pick the topic.
Yes. For better or worse, who knows? We'll see.
For better, I
Okay,
promise.
thank you. Thank you. No, I love this topic.
Anyways,
Love you too.
thank you guys so much for
Yes.
listening. Until next
Thank
time,
you.
bye.
Bye.